In Creo Parametric, you can create special kinds of objects called layouts. Before I jump into Creo Parametric to show you this, I need to talk through a little information. First off, I need to eliminate some confusion about what layouts are. First off, in Creo Parametric 1.0 and earlier, there were objects called layouts, but they're different than layouts today. What were called layouts back in Creo Parametric 1.0 and earlier are now called notebooks, but you will notice that they still have a .lay extension. Notebooks are used in top-down design, and they are used to control important dimensions and parameters that affect multiple components. So again, they're called notebooks now, but in Creo Parametric 1.0 and earlier, they're called layouts, and they have a .lay extension still today. The current layouts have a .cem extension, and these were introduced back in Creo Parametric 2.0 in 2012. As far as that .cem, it is short for Conceptual Engineering Model. The idea is that you can use this layout to lay out your potential design in 2 dimensions and then use it to create your 3D assembly. And Creo Layout used to be available as a separate application and interface, as well as being available within Creo Parametric. That separate application and interface mode for Creo Layout is going away. So let's talk about what this thing is called layout. There you see an image of it over on the right-hand side of the screen. Sort of looks like a notebook, sort of looks like a drawing, but it is different. First off, a layout contains 2D unconstrained geometry. That's different than your typical sketches and your parts and assemblies. In traditional Creo Parametric, your 2D geometry in a sketch is automatically dimensioned and constrained. When you create sketch geometry in this layout, it does not have to be dimensioned, it does not have to be constrained, but you can add dimensions and constraints as desired. When you create your sketches, if you take a look in the image on the right-hand side of the screen, you can see some of the sketching icons in there. It's a lot simpler than sketching in traditional Creo Parametric. It is similar to sketching in Creo Direct. Direct modeling is a different paradigm, which is not going to be history-based, feature-based, or parametric-based. Therefore, the sketching tools tend to be simpler. I like to think of a layout as sort of a combination of a notebook and a skeleton. It is 2-dimensional like a notebook, but you can actually assemble this like a component, just like a skeleton model, and use it to drive geometry in your 3-dimensional model. The general workflow for creating a layout is as follows. First off, you create the layout from the File New button, and when you do that, you're going to have a few different options, whether you want to use a template or a format, just like creating a drawing. Then I typically import data. I find it a lot easier to start off with some geometry I'm leveraging from another model rather than creating everything from scratch. But then you create the additional geometry, the additional sketch entities that you need in order to define the layout. Another critical step, and I'll talk about this in the demonstration, you're going to organize and annotate the geometry. And finally, you can leverage that geometry in your 3-dimensional assembly. Let's jump over to Creo Parametric to take a look at this. Here we are in Creo Parametric. I currently have a layout open. We will come back to this in a moment. First, I want to show you how to create a brand new layout. To do that, you use the new icon, or you can use the keyboard shortcut of Control-N. Here in the new dialog box, we can use the radio button to select layout. Be aware, if you don't have a license for layout, you're not going to see this option in the dialog box. Then you can give it a name. You'll notice the default name is CEM followed by the traditional 0001. CEM again stands for Conceptual Engineering Model, and that will be the same file extension, .cem. Let's click OK. I'm not going to change the name. Here you have the options. I usually create my layouts empty, but some people insist on creating them with formats. If I want to, I could browse to my standard drawing format and use that one. I will click the OK button. And I have multiple sheets in my format, so I'll specify which sheet to use. And mine also expects a number of parameters for the different fields in the title block. But here I am in the layout. Let's switch over to the one that is already created. So here is what a layout looks like. We have our different sketch entities. Let's take a look at the tabs. There are much fewer tabs in Creo layout mode as opposed to Creo Parametric. Here we have the design tab, and the design tab also contains the sketching tools for creating the geometry that you want in the layout. From the Annotate tab, you have the ability to create dimensions, notes, and place symbols and tables on here. Not too much more than that. Then we have this Organize tab that allows you to create sub-layouts, which I'll cover in a different video. And then we have some Tools tab where you can do some different measurements, and you have some geometry inspection tools. And then the traditional View tab for changing between windows or turning on different grid preferences. And I have a common tab just because I have that set up in my user interface to be available in all modes. But let's go back to the design tab in here. Again, these sketching tools are different than you have in traditional sketching mode. For example, if I go to the line over here, by default it's starting or dimensioning from my coordinate system since I have one. But here you can see as I'm sketching, I'm getting these different suggestions for the length and the angle of the entity. And I also have a special toolbar up here that allows me to access other additional controls. Let me hit the middle mouse button a couple times, get out of that geometry creation mode. Another big important distinction between layouts and your typical parts and assemblies, take a look at the model tree over on the left-hand side of the screen. Instead of having a list of the different entities that appear on this particular sheet or page or whatever you want to think of it as, we have things called tags, and we also have something called nodes. Nodes are a way of organizing the different entities that appear in our layout. Again, this is supposed to represent an assembly. There are multiple different components in here, and for that reason we have a bunch of the different entities organized into different nodes. And you'll notice that there are different checkboxes, and you can check the boxes on or off, and we have entities assigned to those different nodes. Then they will appear and disappear appropriately. So again, this is sort of a way of organizing what these entities correspond to in your actual 3D assembly. Another important thing are tags. Tags can be organized by different properties. For example, you could have all the entities of a given color as a certain property tag, but you're going to create your other additional tags. And one of the most important tags is something called public. If something is designated as public, it is visible when you assemble this layout in an assembly. And in a later video, we'll go into the rules about where the layout appears in your model tree based on whether you have a skeleton or not, and based on whether a layout is already assembled or not. But this is layout mode. It is a bit different, and it is a great tool, I find, especially when you are organizing components that have an axis of symmetry about them. For example, if you're designing a transmission or some kind of gear chain, I really like Creo Layout for that, and we'll be exploring Creo Layout more in future videos. I hope you enjoyed this video. For more information, please visit www.creowindshield.com. If you learned something from this video, please give it a thumbs up, and if you like this video, please click the subscribe button and ring the bell to be informed when new videos are uploaded. Thank you very much.